let's take women and sort of gender equality as an example. I mean, is there not an element of wishful thinking here? I mean, yes, women are now allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia. I believe since 2018, they're allowed to attend a football match in a stadium. They're allowed now, very recently, to travel abroad without a male guardian. But to most Western people, these will sound like, they'd be surprised that they weren't allowed for decades to be doing that. And I just wonder, a society that is based on Sharia law, which comes from 1,000 or 1,500 years ago, is that ever going to be compatible with any kind of gender equality in the way that Westerners understand it?
Absolutely. I mean, gender equality is not counter to Sharia law. Sharia law is often misunderstood. It is adaptable. And if you look out through the history of Islam, 1,500 years almost, things have adapted based on the circumstances that people are in. And it's possible. In 1956, we opened our first girls' school in Saudi Arabia, and there were riots all over the country. How could you educate women? You're destroying their purity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Within 50 years, over 60% of graduate level students are women. The leap that's been made is huge. I'm 43, and I'm older than 80% of the country. So the youth, which are now the majority, may want a very different world to me, and almost certainly they do. You have to give and build the world for them, not the world for you. Otherwise, you're always living in the past. We want to be living in the future, and we want to be moving, particularly in this, we live in such a fast-paced world today that catching up is no longer good enough. You have to move twice as fast as the person in front of you, just to catch up before you can, be playing on the same field. Otherwise, we will always be a developing nation. One
place where it might be in 5-10 years, there's a much publicized 2030 plan, and the jewel in that project is this new city that is going to be built by the Red Sea, Neyom. It's almost like a kind of new Dubai, or it's a kind of ultra-futuristic, tourist-friendly place that almost seems to have nothing to do with the old Saudi. How do you reconcile those things?
It's more than just a city. It's a whole region and a development of a region in Saudi Arabia, which is, I've been up there, it's beautiful. And there's areas of historical significance, there's a beautiful coastline, it's empty. There really is very little in it as far as people are concerned.
There are some people there, aren't there?
There are some people there.
What's happening to them?
They're still there. There's a big program. Niyom is the organization that runs Niyom, is running training programs to try and get as many people who are there trained and educated to be part of the development. People who want to leave are being resettled, given land and houses elsewhere. The world moves, the world changes, the world develops. You can't move forward without being bold. Our region has been in a rather difficult place for the last 100 years. And we've spent most of it looking backwards. It's now time to look forwards. That doesn't mean getting rid of everything, but it means developing it.
So the other big, you've been hit by COVID, less reported, but otherwise would be hugely reported, was the collapse in the oil price just a couple of weeks before the pandemic really hit. This seems to be partly a price war situation with Russia, but is also to do with collapsing demand now because of the pandemic. This is the lifeblood of your economy, it's the foundation of the state. How are you going to fare in a world where oil production isn't profitable?
It's not the foundation of the state. The state existed for 40 years before oil was important. And we managed that far. I'm sure we'll manage moving forward. But what it does is it highlights the importance of Vision 2030, the importance of the plan laid forward by the Crown Prince to move the country away from oil, to diversify our economy, to open up opportunities for Saudi citizens to work, live, and thrive in a society that's not solely based on government jobs and oil revenue.
It's going to change the whole country, isn't it? I mean, for example, you've already put up taxes. I understand VAT for the first time has gone up and now is going up again in July. That's, you know, it's existed on this kind of almost limitless funds coming through oil, and the population are used to that. If it has to transition to a more normal country where people pay taxes in return for services, it could fundamentally alter the whole political settlement.
Sure, it's much more difficult considering what's going on, but we have to move away from the old system of relying on oil to provide for everything. It is not, I mean, regardless of oil demand due to COVID, oil is a finite resource. It will run out eventually. Not only is it finite, but we are finding better ways to do things than use oil. And so we want to focus on the world beyond it. If we can do it and still have oil left, great.
Moving around the geography a little bit, I mean, one relationship that seems to be improving is that with Israel. At least, for example, there was a lot of talk about a Saudi TV program that has been popular during the Ramadan period that shows a world pre-1948 with Jews and Arabs living successfully and harmoniously together. And a lot of commentary has been that this is part of a kind of deliberate attempt to begin to warm up the Saudi people to the idea that Israel can be an ally, not a foe. I mean, is that true?
Listen, the relationship or lack thereof with Israel is there for historical reasons. We're probably the last country in the region not to recognize Israel, or one of. All the neighbors recognize and have open relations with Israel. It is a reality that we have to live with. It is there. However, we have always had a commitment to the Palestinian people and what is fair for them. Until we find a solution that suits them, that is fair for the Palestinians, we will always be behind the Palestinians. Will we have to live with an Israeli state? I don't see how we wouldn't. Are we at the stage where we're going to be opening up to a relationship? If it's fair to the Palestinian people, if it's something they're happy with, then we will do it. But we will not move forward without the interests of the Palestinian people squarely at the heart of whatever we do.